Sesh podcast. I'm Elliot, he's George. First of all, apologies because we're a week late on this episode because I messed up the audio on last week's episode. So we had an entire 1 hour, 50-minute conversation, really good conversation with our friend Matt, which is now in the recycling bin because we had audio issues. So apologies for that. I'm sure you're devastated that we were late, but we're here now.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff you missed out on, which you're never going to know about, so it doesn't affect you at all.
Maybe one day we'll get it like remastered.
Oh, yeah.
The Mise En Sesh lost episode.
What, 100 episodes in?
Yeah.
Here you go. Here's this really awful version we had. Before you say something, sorry, can I just clarify that we're in the right places?
Oh. Yes, we are. I'm on the right, you're on the left.
Yes! All right, cool.
Actually, that's funny. I actually checked that like 3 times and then forgot about it and then just had a quiet moment of panic when you brought it up just then.
For those of you wondering, essentially the thing you see overlaid on top of us is just a picture. We don't change it between each episode. So we just essentially put our cameras in and hope for the best. But there have been a couple of instances where Elliot has had my name tag and vice versa. So we like to make sure. But apparently I forgot to ask before the episode started. So there you go. It's in the episode.
I always seem to consistently put myself on the far left.
It's because you're just jealous of my name. That's it.
Yeah.
Did you just compare me to the far left?
Yep. That's exactly what I just did. Political
let's not
humor.
go there, shall we?
To be fair, it's because on my other podcast, the NFL podcast, I'm always on the left-hand side. So I just instinctively, when I'm putting the thing together on OBS, I'm just like, boom, I'm on the left, sorted. And then it's not until like you point out that my name isn't George.
This is true.
Right, so what do you want to talk about this week?
So I've actually got a couple of talking points. So my first of which is films you think were really good, but as a whole, they weren't well received.
Okay.
Because I've got one which immediately comes to mind, which is the Guy Ritchie and Charlie Hunnam King Arthur film.
Ooh,
I loved that film, but it was so hated they immediately cancelled the sequel. Hated's a strong word. It just didn't have as good a reception as they hoped it would to greenlight a sequel, and I really hate that.
Yeah,
mainly because I actually worked on a little bit of it, but that's beside the point.
Did you?
Yeah, I so the company I'm currently working for, I did work experience with them as that film was going around the post-production, and I edited like a 10-second segment of it.
That's not bad. That's a good name drop. Is this 2017 King Arthur Legend of the Sword?
I think that's when it was released because I would have done experience like 2015.
See, I haven't actually seen that one. I was thinking of the old King Arthur film, the 2004 one. 2004 King Arthur. It's just called King Arthur. I watched that. I think my brother had that on DVD.
Oh!
And I remember loving
that.
Yes. I'll be honest, I don't think I've probably watched it since 2004, but I know that I watched it and I liked it. But okay, so we're talking about films that you watch them and they're good films, but they weren't sort of well received. You know, like sort of box office well received, or
so say out of a group of 10, only like 2 or 3 people would have actually enjoyed the film.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind immediately is Blade Runner 2049, because I love that film. I love that film so much, not just because like it's all visually stunning and Ryan Gosling's just like brooding and handsome, but I just love that film as a piece of stuff. But a lot of people like, see, I'm a film student, so obviously I watched that film and I'm like, oh, it's all so edgy and cool and blah. And then like regular people who watch it, they're just sort of like a bit slow, a bit boring.
I remember watching that film because I was on a plane at the time and they had the films on the screen. So that was my first experience with it, was on a plane with crappy headphones. So I didn't like it the first time. And this was, when did that film come out?
I want to say 20.
2015-esque?
No, it might even be 2019. No, 2014. Let me check. Let me Google it. I've got the internet here.
Have a quick Google.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, 2017.
Yeah, that works out. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I was on a plane when I watched it, and my God, I was just watching like, have I missed something? Like, I'm very confused here because I couldn't totally focus on it. The story jumped around a little bit in
Yeah,
my head.
it's one of those films that you have to sit down and give it your full attention. You can't.
Yeah.
I couldn't watch it on a plane. I couldn't watch it casually.
Well,
Like,
it's because it's one of those films you've either got Blade Runner 2049, which is the big one they're allowed to show, or you've got Elf in like July,
again,
and it's like seen Elf fair few times. But yeah,
yeah, I recommend rewatching that. That's your homework for the week.
there you go.
Watch Blade Runner 2049, either with headphones or like good speakers and like a big TV, in a dark room by yourself.
I don't know what kind of budget you think I've got,
Well, you've got
but it's
headphones right
going.
there.
Yeah, I was going to say it's going to be headphones. There's no like 8K TV screen I'm going to watch it on with like surround sound, like 7.1 Dolby surround sound.
Honestly, the whenever I get like a new set of headphones or like a new speaker setup, or I just change my audio setup somehow, the go-to test that I do to see how it's changed is I go and put Blade Runner 2049 on, because the sound design and the music and that is just so like next level. I just love it so much. Like it's got such deep basses and then it's really high highs. It's just like a really good audio test, and it just sounds awesome as well.
Yeah.
So that's my go-to. But yeah, that's my pick for a film that is
Okay.
underappreciated by the masses, but if you give it the attention that only really a film student or film enthusiast would, it's actually a really brilliant film.
I remember, like you said, like the visuals of that film are stunning. Like
Roger Deakins won the Oscar for that, I'm pretty sure, or did he?
I thought he did the original. I don't think he did the.
No, he did. He did the sequel. I can't remember. I think he was definitely nominated for an Oscar for 2049, but I can't remember if he won it or not. I feel like he did. Yeah, yes, he did.
I like how we're both just resorting to googling stuff now.
Well, yeah, we've got to get it right, haven't we?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, yeah, he did
he did win the
2049. Yeah. Okay. I don't. Did he do the original then? Or am I making that up?
Um,
I don't
that's a
think he
great
did.
question. I don't feel like he did.
I don't think he did. No. Clearly, I'm just getting my wires crossed. But yeah. No, yeah. Like I feel like there are definitely some films where they're obviously anticipated to be like really amazing hits, like which is why they get these big stars signing on, because it's like, yeah, look, we're going to do like a 5 picture deal,
Yeah.
and then the film flops. It's like, okay.
Well, the thing that's interesting about Blade Runner 2049 is that the original Blade Runner wasn't popular when it first came out in
Yeah.
80 whatever it was. It wasn't that popular. It sort of grew as a cult classic sort of for years after its release. But initially it wasn't that popular because, well, even today if you watch it, it's quite an edgy film. Like it's sort of like I don't like the original Blade Runner as much as I like 2049, which I'm sure there's going to be some die-hard Blade Runner fan that's going to shout at me for that one, but I don't. But like it's kind of interesting how like the new Blade Runner is sort of on the same path. Like it wasn't that well received by the masses when it first came out, but I think as it comes to like DVD, or if it comes on, I think it's on Now TV at the moment, as it comes on Netflix and stuff, I think more people will watch it, and I think people will start to realise, oh, actually, that's a really good film, which is a shame because I would have loved to have seen what they were going to do with potential sequel, which I'm guessing probably isn't going to come out for a long, long time.
I mean, to be fair, what was the time frame between the original and the 2049 sequel? It was like 30 years. So give it
30 years,
2050. That's when the next one will come out. There you go.
How
Yeah.
meta would that be? They released the sequel to 2049 in 2049.
Ooh. When was the original set? It was like,
The original one was set in 2019, I think.
so maybe that's what they've already announced when the sequel's coming out. There you go. Boom.
Whoa. Disconnect the wires.
It's the fact everyone else has been sat there for years, like, yeah, no shit, mate. Yeah. No, I mean, I guess that brings up another point, sort of going back to King Arthur, the fact that the sequel was cancelled. Like, they had it planned, but it was cancelled. What is a film you think, maybe not one which, like, it had a sequel which was then scrapped, but one you think needed or deserved a sequel? Or, like,
Oh
a follow-up film or something?
God, there's immediately one film's come to my head, but I can't remember the name of it.
Go on, see if I can guess it.
No, I can't. I can't remember. Oh, that's going to bug me for ages. That is.
Uh, I can't think of any. I've asked this question. I fully blanked on like any film I've seen.
God, because there was. Oh, what is that? There was one film that I watched, and it was like, it was basically the whole film was like it was like it had to have a sequel. Like it was a good film, and it ended on a cliffhanger, and it was like there has to be a sequel, but I can't remember what film it is. Oh,
Yeah.
that's not a very good answer.
There's a film I saw. Oh, it's been first year uni, so it would have been like 2017 when I saw it. I think it came out 2016, 2017, and it's called Leatherface. I think you can work out where you know what universe it's set in, and it essentially shows you the events that lead up to Leatherface being born, like Leatherface being created as a character. And essentially, like you follow the character and his progression. You know, you see him, and then you see the event which leads to him becoming the character of Leatherface. And I remember the film ending. I was like, my God, I need to, you know, like, have they planned a sequel? Are they going to show what happens to this character? And then I remembered Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out in the 80s, 70s or 80s. I was like, oh, it's a pre-sequel. So there's not going to be a sequel because the story has already been concluded. It's one of those ones that just sort of tacked it on just because they could. But yeah,
That's I think the industry they call that a cash grab.
the
Pretty
horse
sure.
isn't. The horse can still produce a bit of cash. Yeah.
No, I'd love to give you my answer, but I genuinely can't remember. There's one film. I'm not going to give another answer because I'm so set on this one. Hopefully it'll come back to me at some point. At some point through the episode, I'll just burst out about some random film. Or maybe
Yeah.
I'll just message you at 3 a.m. in the morning, like, what's this?
Yeah. No, I had a point, and it's just totally gone out the window now. Totally forgotten it.
This
God
is
damn it.
becoming quite a common
It's
nuisance for this podcast, isn't
yeah.
it? We just
We should probably start writing things down. Okay,
probably
go on then. Next point I had was what are your favorite directors, or who are your favorite directors, or
favorite
like a
directors.
director who it's like, regardless of what it is, if they release something, you're like, yeah, I want to go see that, just because you love their work.
Uh, Interesting. The thing is, I don't think I have any particular just one that I fangirl over.
Yeah,
I'll be honest, because like I don't something that I've always been cautious of. Like once I started to like pursue film, is that I don't want to be like there's certain individuals that I met that you probably know who I'm talking about once I start making my point. But certain individuals that I met in first year of a film and TV at uni, where like they had a favorite director, and everything they did was like a rehash of every idea they had was like a rehash of that one person.
they essentially want to become that
Yeah,
person.
and
Yeah,
I always really wanted to avoid that. I never wanted to sort of get fixed in on one person's style. Like I love the way Scorsese builds a story. I love the way that Tarantino writes dialogue, but I don't want to do everything that way.
mm,
So I never really wanted to sort of subscribe, if you will, to one
sure.
director. Um, so I'm gonna throw out a basic boy answer. I'm gonna say Tarantino because I've never watched a Tarantino film that I didn't thoroughly enjoy or like walk away from being like disappointed. Like,
I
but I've not seen every single Tarantino film, so don't.
No, that's true. What was the recent one? Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I It got to the point in that film. For those of you who haven't seen it, I'm going to spoil the end of it. So here's your warning. But the whole film, I was just here like, what the fuck is happening? Like, why is this a thing? And it was the final 5 minutes where like all the shit hits the fan. I was like, right, this is the Tarantino bit I came for, and that is the only reason why I didn't outright hate the film. It was those final 5 minutes. I was like, essentially, what you're doing is following this guy around, and it's all well and good, but it feels like you're not watching anything. Like nothing is
Yeah.
really happening until the very end, where it's had a big climax. Because essentially, what happens is the stuntman goes for a job, and he's doing the job, and then, or not the stuntman, sorry, the actor goes for the job and is doing the job, and the stuntman encounters Charlie, whatever the hell his name is, the cult guy. I can't remember his name. But yeah, it's like that happens, and then everything comes together at the end, and it's like, yep, there's your Tarantino bit, like that little 5 minute segment of just chaos. But I think a director who I, off the top of my head, can't think of anything he's made where I don't enjoy it is Edgar Wright.
Okay.
Because I know he's done stuff before it, but the first time I came across his work was the TV show Spaced, and I didn't realize it was him at the time, but I watched that, and obviously I loved it because it's like Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, and just the whole cast of actors. And then it was the Cornetto trilogy is what sold me on him, because I just remember watching Shaun of the Dead for the first time, and I went into it thinking it's a zombie, like a horror film.
Yeah.
I think I thought it was a sequel to Dawn of the Dead. I think that's what I thought it was. And obviously it's a complete parody of it. And I just remember watching that, coming out of it at the end, and I was just like, oh my God, what? Because it's so, like, it makes so much sense in terms of, like, you could follow the narrative so clearly. But also, it's complete and utter madness. Because it's so... What's the word? It's very clever, but also very goofy at the same time. And then the whole Cornetto trilogy is just, it's just great. Like Hot Fuzz, I wrote like a 3,000 word essay on like a 5 minute segment of that, which is like where the Nicholas Angel confronts the whole cult thing in the castle ruins. Like I wrote a 5 minute, like a 3,000 word essay on that 5 minute bit. But then I remember seeing World's End for the first time and I hated it. And then I watched it again about a year later and I loved it. So it's one of those things where there's not a film off the top of my head or any piece of work which Edgar Wright has done which I don't like.
What do you think of Baby Driver?
Baby Driver, I really liked it because he said the reason why he came up with that is he will be listening to random songs and he will piece together a scene in his head based around that song. And that's where he got the inspiration for it. And I've always done that. It's something I've done, and a lot of the things I've written, like a lot of the beats have happened because I've been listening to music and thought, oh, that's a cool little sequence. Not that any of my work's very good, but like it's one of those things where it sort of gave me a bit of hope. I was like, okay, if he's been very successful with this, and I'm doing a similar trope, yeah, you never know. But there's Last Night in Soho, I think is the upcoming film he's got. And it's got the girl from Queen's Gambit, can't remember her name, and Matt Smith in it, Doctor Who. So I'm really looking forward to that coming out, but I don't know anything about it, mainly because I just haven't really looked into it. But all I know is I want to watch that film. But yeah. I don't know.
Fair.
Yeah.
Are
there any?
Sorry, no, you go first.
I was going to say, have you got any directors where they come to mind immediately? Or they come to mind and immediately you're like I kind of want to steer clear of what they've done, just because either you don't like their style, you don't like something they've done, Like, you're just not really a fan of them?
Um, Not really. I'll be honest.
No?
Not really. I'm sure if I like put together like some of my least favorite films, I'd probably like notice a common director in there. But I've never really given it that much thought because if I don't like a film, I don't pay attention to who directed it. So I've not developed a vendetta against any particular director yet.
Oh, fair enough.
So,
Because I
well,
know,
consciously anyway.
because I know Michael Bay gets a lot of hate. Because it's just sort of like, oh, the Michael Bay approach is just put as many explosions in there as possible. I like a lot of his stuff. Maybe not narratively, some of it is just incomprehensible. But um, visually, it is stunning. Like the Transformers films, the first few, or like, I don't even, there's like five of them now, isn't there?
God, I think there might be even more than that.
Jesus. I haven't seen since like
Well,
the third
this is
one.
the thing with Michael Bay. Is like my. I'm gonna get his list up here, but the only films that are from Michael Bay that I've seen are a handful of the Transformers ones. I can't remember which ones. Obviously, the first one, Dark Side of the Moon, Revenge of the Fallen. I'm almost definitely seen. Pearl Harbor, Bad Boys 1 and 2, and Armageddon. They're the Michael Bay films that I've
You
seen.
did Armageddon?
Yeah,
Oh, damn. Okay.
and the,
Wait, is that the one with the
with
asteroid coming to Earth?
yeah,
Yeah, because then who was it turned around to him and went? Because it's the miners or whatever
yeah,
it
they
is,
send
like
the
the drill
miners.
operators, to
Yeah,
space, and then one of the actors turned around and went, "Wouldn't it make more sense to teach actual astronauts how to mine?" And he just turned around and went, "Shut the fuck up." I
yeah,
think that's hilarious.
yeah. The thing is with Michael Bay films. If you look at his list of films, a lot of them are like the main sort of selling point of them is action and explosions. Like I
Yeah,
don't think there's anything wrong with anyone having like a, a tendency to just include loads of explosions and stuff because some people just like making that stuff. And if the story makes enough sense, like you can argue about that all you want, but sometimes you go into like I don't think anyone, including myself, excuse me, goes to a Transformers film and expects to have their like mind blown by some incredible story that just like grabs you and
true.
takes hold of you. You go there because you want to, like you watching giant space car robots fight each other essentially. Like
Yeah,
like
no, that's a
you
fair
got to
point.
take it for what it is. Like in like Pearl Harbor, for example, that was another film where like again a lot of people said that it wasn't sort of narratively very strong. Have you seen Pearl Harbor 2001?
I've seen bits, but I've never seen it all
Yeah,
the way through.
like
Yeah,
it's one of those films where like there's a sprinkle of story in there, but the main thing is obviously the attack on Pearl Harbor.
mm.
And if you take it for what it is, it's a good entertaining piece of film. If you go into it looking for like a really gripping like wartime story, you're probably not going to get it. In fact, you're
Yeah,
definitely not going to get it. But if you go into it expecting like an action film, you're going to get the action film, and then you're going to be surprised by these little bits of sincerity that is sprinkled in it. Like there's one scene which I'll never forget. Um, I can't show you it, but there's a scene in Pearl Harbor where, don't worry, this doesn't spoil anything, but a scene in Pearl Harbor where like a ship's been capsized because it's been bombed to hell, and there's a hole in the hull, and like there's obviously people on the hull trying to get people out, and there's like a hand coming through the hole in the hull, like trying to get help, but obviously they can't just cut open the hull and get him out because the boat's sinking. So
mm.
like this other marine or sailor, whatever he was, he just like grabs hold of the hand as the guy is trapped inside the boat. Obviously, he's slowly drowning, but he just like holds his hand because he can't do anything else. I remember seeing that and I was like, I wasn't ready for that.
Damn.
I think I
That,
might have
that,
been like 13 or 14 at the time, and I was like, oh yeah, war film, explosions, yeah, yeah. And all of a sudden there was this
really
like
emotional moment.
yeah, and I was just like, oh, that's sad.
Jeez. I yeah. I don't know. I think that yeah. I don't know where to go from that one. I will move on though to another
Oh,
Michael
actually,
Bay.
before we move on to another thing, I just remembered a director that I am cautious about.
Hmm.
Might be an unpopular opinion, but I'm cautious of Christopher Nolan.
I wasn't gonna mention Nolan. I like his films, but from what I've heard, he's not. Uh, I need to tread very cautiously here. He's his films are great. Don't get me wrong. I love his work. Tenet, I have some issues with because the sound mixing was off. Like it's very difficult to hear people at times. But from what I've heard, he's very intense on set. Like
Oh, I
he
imagine, yeah.
gets what he needs, but it's a thing of it's just go, 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 go. Like you need to give 150% the whole day. And it's like because I can understand obviously the pressure of it's especially someone like Nolan, where he's had a lot of attention because like the Batman trilogy and Inception and all that, like someone up on that pedestal, I can understand the pressure of feeling like you need to have every shot perfect.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying if this is something Nolan's done because I haven't heard this anywhere. I'm just saying like if then that is taken out on crew, that's where I start to lose respect for people. Because again, I'm not
Yeah.
saying that Nolan's done something like that. I've never worked with him. I wish I could, but it's like if you are that intense to work with, I get the impression that some of the crew will just feel drained after time, and it's just going
Oh,
to be a
yeah.
vicious
Well,
cycle. Yeah.
I'm just cautious of him because I like a lot of his films are very sort of based on these sort of high concept, like these ideas that are sort of a bit, you know, like Tenant's a great example. Like I've seen Tenant, I've watched videos, and I'm still not sure I know what was going on in that film. Like, like, but then in other
Yeah.
ones like Inception, nailed it. I love that film. Interstellar, I both love that film and sort of
That
don't at the
one,
same time.
yeah, I'm a bit
Like,
hit and miss on that one.
like I get the whole traveling through wormholes and all this finding and he manages, he goes into falls into the whatever it's called. He knocks the book off the thing. I'm like, oh yeah, that's good. But then it's just like that one scene where it's like, love is the only thing that transcends time and space. I'm just like, oh, you lost me there.
Fuck off.
Like,
Uh,
it's one of
Fun
those.
fact. Sorry, Greedy, you know the bit where he is in like the fourth dimension,
Yeah,
where it's like he can interact with things and like all that. That was a physical set.
yeah. I've seen the behind the scenes thing of it.
Yeah, Matthew McConaughey's on a wire,
Yeah,
and he's being pulled around the set, and I'm like, that's dedication. One credit I will give to Nolan is if he can get it in camera, he
yeah,
will. Like the hallway sequence from Inception is a good
yeah.
example of that. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to respect that. But I'm always just a bit cautious of his films because it's the sort of stray too far from like understandable sometimes. But
Yeah.
a lot of the time he does hit it perfectly. So which is why I still obviously I do like him and respect him massively as a director. But I am a bit cautious. Like when I first saw the trailers for Tenet and started reading about that, I was like, this is a bit of a confusing
I
premise.
remember watching it in the cinema because obviously that's like the one film that came out over lockdown, or not lockdown, but like over the past year or so. I remember watching it, and then my girlfriend and I were in the pub afterwards, like getting food, both frantically trying to find any article that would explain what the fuck we've just watched because it's so clever to the point I feel like I'm not smart enough to be able to go and watch it, kind of thing. Like I felt dumb coming out of that film because I felt like there was something I'd missed.
Well, the thing is, you can go like that. You can make all these this twisted web of things that you have to sort of be smart to understand. But like that's not necessarily what films are about.
You,
Like, I think
yeah,
your story can be as complex or what as you like, but it shouldn't then be like on the viewer to then sort of study to make your story make sense. If you get what I mean. So like
mm,
if you want to do a complex plot, that's fine. But I think you need to sort of wrap it up in a way that, at the end everything clicks together. You're like, oh, okay. Like I feel like if you're walking away from a film and you're like frantically trying to figure out what's going on, that's where I'm sort of like, oh well, I don't feel like you've necessarily done a great job
Yeah.
explaining the story. Like it's one thing to walk away and be like, not understand certain things, and like, it's one thing to have a film that you have to watch a couple of times to get the best out of, like Shutter Island, for example. Like a lot of that stuff might not make sense on the first viewing, but watch that again, it's great.
Question of the week. What is a film you believe needs to be watched more than once to experience it properly? My example is Shutter Island.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. You just won the question of the week. But yeah, Shutter Island is a great example of that because of the fact there are so many little hints throughout.
Yeah.
Like that again, that's a film I wrote an essay on for like a 5-minute segment of it. I absolutely love that film.
I wrote my dissertation on it.
Damn. All right, you one up me there.
Yeah, like, yeah. It's one thing to write a film that you have to watch more than once to get the most out of, like, sort of different interpretations of the story. But then there's writing a film that's just like so confusing or so like above regular viewers that they have to like do research just to figure out what the core thing was. Like Shutter Island, you could watch that film start to finish and you could completely understand one interpretation of it.
Yeah.
And you could watch it again with a different perspective and you could get an entirely different interpretation. Whereas with like Tenet, for example, you watch that, you're going to be confused until you do the work to figure it out, and I don't really like that.
I remember I watched Shutter Island for the first time, and I understood it. I can't remember when that film came out, but I understood it, but I was too young to appreciate it. I watched it a second time knowing the twist, so I picked up on all the little bits, which is sort of hinting towards it. There's still some of them I missed. But then it was the third time I watched it, I picked up on, I think it's like the final line Leonardo DiCaprio says, which is would it be better to live as a good man and to
No, live as a monster or die as a good man.
That's it. Live as a monster or die as a good man. And that, it was on the third viewing I finally understood that, because then it's Mark Ruffalo's character calls out his real name, and the first time he turns around and responds to that name in the film, and that only clicked after 3 viewings, and I was like, oh my god. But I actually saw a video about the little subtleties throughout that film literally a couple of days ago, and it's something as subtle as I'm hoping you know the scene I'm on about, where Leo and Mark Ruffalo's characters are interviewing all of the patients,
and there's a security guard behind Leo,
Leonardo and the woman, but not behind Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah,
and it's like something like that is so obscure, and 9 times out of 10 you're not going to notice it.
I'll do you one better. If you watch the opening sequence, when he goes into the office with I forget the character's name.
It's like Teddy.
Ben Kingsley, what's his name? The Doctor.
Oh, yeah, Ben Kingsley.
That scene, the paintings on the wall, the entire story is laid out in those paintings.
I remember you telling me this, yeah. Yeah, because that's one of those things, again, if you don't know what the hell to look for, then it's going to go past you. Like, it's going to go way over your head. You're not going to, you're just going to, oh, that's cool set design. But yeah, like, that's cool. The fact that he, whenever possible, any water is removed from the scene.
Yep.
And I think that's really cool. Because wasn't there a whole thing about the woman goes to take a drink
and there's no water in the glass,
but there's no glass there.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Because she's doing that, and people are like, "Oh, is it meant to be like a dummy take or something?" Like they're rehearsing it without the props, and it's like, no, you're seeing it from. Is it Teddy? Is his character? Wait, are you seeing it from Leonardo's point
his
of
real
view?
name is Edward Daniels. No, sorry.
So I think it's Teddy Marshall or something.
He's
I can't remember.
God, I've forgotten as well. His Marshall name is Edward Daniels, and his real name is Andrew Layden.
There you go. Yeah, you can
because
tell
it's an
you've watched
anagram.
it too. Teddy Daniels, yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, you see it from his perspective, and the water's not there. But then you see it from another perspective, which you'd assume is Mark Ruffalo's, who's Chuck, is his name. You see it from his perspective, and you see the water because Teddy, Leo's character, he has such an issue with water because of the tragedy of his story. Anything to do with water, he's like blacking it out.
yeah,
But then I can't remember who told me this, but the opening shot you see, the first thing you see is a mirror image of
yeah,
Teddy. And immediately that's a sign of this is not what you think it is. Like, it's not, like, nothing is how it appears.
yeah. Like if a film opens with like a mirror shot or like a shot where like one half of the face is in darkness or something like that, you just know there's going to be two sides to that character. Like
Something is
just
not
immediately,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. Like, I could literally sit and chat about that film for hours. Like, I love that. That is one of my favorite films of all time.
It's yeah, same. It might even be my favorite film of all time. I've seen that film now more than 20 times.
Jeez. How many times for your dissertation?
About 12 my dissertation. I think I got
Damn.
up to.
Where was my invite to the viewing ceremonies?
Mate, there weren't ceremonies at all. It was me watching it frantically like 4 a.m. after my fifth Monster Energy trying to get my dissertation done.
Mate,
I
I
don't think
remember
you want
that.
to be invited to that. I'm
Just
just
sort
there
of
shaking
BO,
and like typing and
BO's just emerging from the room, just green clouds. No, because I did mine on the MCU as a whole.
all right,
So
yeah.
I rewatched the whole MCU to try and get any little thing I could take out of it. And then all of the stuff I got was from just doing research. Like, I think I just used it as an excuse to to push the work sort of to the side for as long as I could. So I rewatched
Mm.
because it was Captain Marvel was the latest film to be released when I handed in my dissertation. So I think it was 20 films at the time of writing, 21 when I handed it in. Yeah. So yeah, that was a lot of films.
It's quite a broad topic, isn't it? Really, the MCU.
Yeah. Well, I had 5 points I was addressing because in my eyes then it was like 10,000 words. That's five 2,000 word essays,
Yeah,
and that I could do a lot more easily. I'll need to find my dissertation and tell you what the topics were. Like, I've got it somewhere, but it, looking at it now, I'm like, what was I reaching for? It was like I think one of the points was what is like monetary value and how is it like represented? I was like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, essentially, I was just comparing Tony Stark to Peter Parker, and that was the big comparison I had. And I was like, what was I reaching for there? But,
I feel like
whatever.
every film student who writes a dissertation on anything probably has that same feeling afterwards.
It's like, what shit was I chatting there? But it is one of those things where we were given free reign of what we were able to write. We were literally told, because I know a lot of people who were given a list of like 20 questions they could address, and you had to do one of those.
Yeah.
But we were told, right, submit whatever question you'd like to write your dissertation on, and we will provide you a tutor. And I was like, okay, sick. And I knew I wanted to write on comics or like comic book films, so I just decided I'll do the MCU as a whole. And I was given a tutor, and I sat down with him and we started discussing, the comic book films. And I just remember him saying something to me, and it was about we were chatting about Black Panther because that came out in what 2018,
Yeah, around that time.
2017, 2018. I remember chatting with him, and he was like, "Oh, so how are you gonna address the representation of black characters in the MCU? Like, I mean, you've got Rhodey and that, I was like, I was going to address Black Panther. But is there a Black Panther film? You're meant to be my tutor. Like this one came out a year ago. Yeah, I don't know. I had a lot of issues when it came to writing my dissertation, but I got it in. I got a decent grade on it.
It's all that
Leave it
matters, isn't
there.
it?
Yeah.
Done's better than perfect.
True. And my degree has actually been a huge help in getting where I am in my career. And I'm not being sarcastic at all.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, let's move away from education. Point for you. What are some cult films, like cult classics, where everyone's like, you have to have seen it, which you haven't seen?
Cult films that I haven't seen The Goonies,
Ooh, okay.
which is I feel kind of bad saying that actually because my grandma bought me that on DVD in like 2005 or something.
You are an awful grandchild.
Thing is, I had it on my thing for ages, but that was before I had my own my own means of watching DVDs. Like if I wanted to watch something, I had to watch it in the living room, and I spent all my
Yeah.
time in my bedroom playing with like Star Wars toys. So it's one of those things that I never watched.
Yeah.
Sorry, Grandma.
Ah, fair enough. There goes our viewers. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think. Well, I haven't seen any of the Godfather films.
Oh, that's a good shot actually, because I've that's the thing is like they've been spoiled for me so many times because people talk about them so much. Like I know what
Yeah.
happens vaguely, and I've seen such a big collection of like the iconic scenes. So I've never actually watched them just as a whole in their entirety. I've watched pieces of them because I was told to do it, or I watched a clip on like Facebook or whatever, and I was like, oh okay, I'm gonna watch that scene in full. But I've never sat down and watched them all the way through.
Yeah, I
That's
remember being shown a clip in university, literally within like the first few weeks of university. I was sat down and shown the opening sequence, the opening like 10 minutes to the first Godfather film, and I was like, huh, I'm bored as shit. And it was just one of those things of people talk about it all the time. Like you say, I know like the rough sort of points of what happens and all that, but I have no interest in actually watching the films. It's not something which sounds very appealing to me because they're like 3 hours a piece.
yeah, that's probably one of the things that put me off watching them is like they get recommended to you so much. It's sort of a similar principle to like why I'd never watched The Office all the way through either
Mm,
version because I've heard so much about it and I've seen so many small pieces of it. Is where I don't want to sit down and spend the entire time to watch the in between bits to all the good bits that have already been shown.
yeah,
Which is why I hate being shown things before I've seen the full film. I'm just going to change my camera setting.
yeah. So,
I just realised that I was getting like a light flicker behind me,
oh,
and
nice.
then I realised my shutter speed was 80 rather than 50. Whoa.
Oh, what's mine? Mine's at 30,
30?
I think. Yeah,
Do that, we'll
yeah.
see. See how wavy it is.
Whoa, yeah.
Time for a quick lesson on shutter speeds and how they affect motion.
Did you know, fun fact, if you have the right shutter speed, you can make a helicopter look like it's just glitching. Love
Wait, so you're
that.
telling me that helicopter video wasn't just a glitch?
My God. Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, so we don't live in the Matrix.
I mean, with the aftermath that was 2020, I feel like there's still a good chance we might be.
Yeah.
They're filming. They might have wrapped principal photography on it, but The Matrix 4
Are they?
by the yeah.
I've
I know they've at least started filming
I heard things about it years ago, but I
because
thought it was just
it's
like a
by the Wachowski sisters now.
oh yeah, Matrix 4 2021 film.
Yeah.
Oh
So I'm pretty
mad.
sure they wrapped principal photography. Yeah.
Oh, I'm buzzing for that.
Yeah, that should be good. I remember watching all three of those. I think I did them all in one sitting. Like, well, obviously getting up to go to the toilet and stuff, but like all within the space of a day, I watched all three
Yeah,
Matrix films, and but got progressively more bored as the day went on. Because
really.
the first one is amazing, and then the other two are like, in comparison.
Yeah, to be fair, yeah, one is the best in my opinion, and the second is I don't think Matrix 2 is like that far below Matrix 1. I think
The third is
the
definitely,
third is like the weakest one. I think, but again, I don't think it's a weak film, but I'm kind of biased because I saw those. Again, I saw the Matrix when I was way too young to have seen the Matrix because I saw the first Matrix, 1999 it came out. I saw the first Matrix just before the second Matrix came out, which was so it would have been 2002 or three, because the second one came out
Yeah.
in 2003. Now
Eight?
I was born in 1996, so I would have been
You would
five
have
or
been like,
six when I watched
Jesus.
the first Matrix. So
My God.
so that explains a myriad
So when
of childhood.
Morpheus comes forward and goes, "Would you like the red or the blue pill?" You turn around and went, "Oh, can I have both of them?" Tic Tacs. Yeah.
Like so, I watched them because I think my brother really liked them, and my parents really liked them. Because my brother's 5 or 6 years older than me, so he was old enough to watch them, kind of, not really, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I just sort of got taken along with the with the journey. So Matrix is sort of one of those things that I always look back on it fondly because it's one of the first, along with Lord of the Rings, it's one of like the first like film series where I was like, whoa. But I rewatched them a few months ago with Holly, watched one each night,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, these are definitely good. It's not just nostalgia. It's when you think about like the fight scenes in the first Matrix. When you think about them doing that in 1999 and all the stuff they were
Yeah.
doing, it's just like,
Well, it's the CG has not held up as well. But when you put into
yeah,
account the CG is over 20 years old, it's pretty damn
yeah. The
good. Like
CG
it
is
was
almost as old as I am.
revolutionary. Oh God, that's depressing. It's almost as old as I am. That's even worse. Um, but yeah, it's those films are great. But I just remember growing up watching James Bond films. I say films. James Bond with my dad, and he'd only ever show my brother and me one scene at a time.
Right.
And obviously, and this is like days, weeks apart where we'd see different scenes. And in my head, I thought he was just showing us like short films or something because it was just a scene. I didn't appreciate what was going on, what was happening. I just remember, I can't remember which Pierce Brosnan one it is. I want to say it's like Die Another Day or something. Essentially, he's got his Aston Martin of the film, the V8 or whatever it was at the time. And it's on an ice. He's in like an ice place.
Oh yeah,
He's got
yeah.
like spikes coming out the tires and stuff. I just remember he got his spiky tires, his camouflage car, and he just drove up a wall, and then people walked past him, and then he drove back down it, and a guy on a moped comes and just crashes over the top of it. I just remember watching that, and that was like my favorite thing ever. And then when I said to my dad, "Oh, can we watch that one again?" He went, "No, we'll watch another one." I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." I just hadn't appreciated it. It literally took me years to piece together what was happening. And then I sat down and I was like, oh, okay, all right. He was showing me parts of the film bit by bit. Because obviously sitting down for an hour just wasn't an option when I was a child.
Maybe he was shielding you from the bits that he didn't like.
But then he showed me guys getting run over by cars and, diamonds being exploded into their faces. Yeah, yeah.
It's all
Just overly
subjective, isn't
protective
it?
as well.
Film is subjective.
Very true. God. There are a lot of films I remember watching too young. I was not like I don't like body horror. Like Saw I won't watch because I feel so uncomfortable watching like when there's a scene where someone puts their hand into like a spinning saw blade and it
All
just
right,
cuts
yeah,
down the middle of their hand because they need to put in blood. And I just remember seeing that out of context. I was like, it's actually making me feel a bit sick because I'm that uncomfortable watching it. So I've watched like breakdowns of like the timeline and how things happen and stuff, and I find it a really interesting story. But it's just the gore I don't like. And
yeah.
then
I've not never been a fan of gore particularly.
I can appreciate blood and someone getting their head chopped off and that, but it's people where you see the whole death and it's really just unnecessary.
Yeah,
Like it doesn't add to the story much.
yeah.
Obviously,
That's
Saw is designed where it's horrific and you see people die in horrific ways. But it's like I don't need to see that much. Like I don't know. You could leave some of it
yeah.
to my imagination.
Like on the flip side though, there's people who watch the Saw films almost exclusively for that. I remember being in secondary school and my friends, well, no, not really friends, acquaintances at the time. They'd all like talk
Yeah.
about like a sleepover they had in the summer or something, which I wasn't invited to because whatever. and they'd like, oh, we watched all the Saw films, and I'd be like, oh, all right, I ain't seen Saw films. Like, oh, you're just scared of them, aren't you? You're just scared. You don't want to see blood. I'm like, no, I'm just not bothered. Like, it's like, like
Yeah.
Saving Private Ryan is a good example. Like, I can watch that film. In that film, you see like all sorts of body parts being blown off. That's a good use of gore, in my opinion, because that's obviously
Yeah,
it
that's really
portrays
well done.
the war as what it was. But when I watch Saw, like you brought up, like watching the breakdowns of like the timeline and stuff, that is interesting. But
Yeah.
the reason I've never watched a Saw film through, I've seen scenes and stuff, but I've never bothered to watch them all the way through because I just like it's not that it makes me like feel uncomfortable or anything, or like makes me cringe or feel sick when I see the like things on screen because it doesn't bother me at all. Um, and again, I think that's because I've sort of become desensitized to it because of like video games and other action films and stuff. It's
Yeah.
just when there's so much emphasis placed on it, it's like, what am I watching here? You know what I mean? Like when you
Yeah.
sit back and if you're watching like a great dialogue scene, you're like, whoa, I'm watching this. Then like you watch like a scene where it's like blood spraying around for like 6.5 minutes straight. You just sat there and you're like,
Well,
okay then.
one thing about the Saw franchise which really bugged me because they've got a new film which was meant to have come out last year. I think it's come out this year called Spiral. I think it's called Spiral, and it's Eddie. No, not Eddie Murphy. Sorry, Chris Rock. Chris Rock has produced it and is leading, like, starring in it. And it's Spiral, the Book of Saw. So it's meant to be, I'm assuming, like a parallel film. It takes place within the universe, but it's not connected directly. Um, but one issue with the franchise I had in general was the fact that they could never top the twist of the first one, which is if you haven't seen it, then spoilers. But I mean, the film's really old. I say really old. It's old enough now to the point you probably know it. Where the whole film, like the two characters wake up in this bathroom. They're both chained up and stuff. I think one wakes up in a bathtub, like covered in water. He wakes up. They're both they they both wake up. They're both awake. I think I've established that. And there's a body in the middle of the room, and he's got like a tape recorder or something with him. He's got a gun in his hand, all that kind of stuff. There's blood everywhere. And then at the end of the film, as one of the guys has like essentially like cut his foot off, and is like he's sort of hobbling to try and get help. The other guy has realised he's trapped there. He's not getting away. The body in the middle of the room stands up and reveals himself to be Jigsaw. And that was an amazing twist. Like I did not see that coming first time. Like when I saw that film. But then every other film, they try and implement some twist where it's like, oh look, this character was actually part of it the whole time. It's like, okay, right. So essentially, what you've done is just retcon something you did in the previous film because you thought the character was cool enough to come back. And it's like I think the weirdest one for me, the weirdest twist, was the fact the guy who cut his foot off in the first film actually turns out to be helping Jigsaw later in the timeline. I'm like, who the hell is writing this? And I
it's
will have whatever they're having.
it's like I don't know what to call it, like franchise syndrome or something. But it's one of those things where like the first film does really well and the second film does well. The second film does well, and they sort of spin off all these different films. It just explodes because they want to get that cash money.
Mm.
And then they're like, okay, right, we've written this thing. Okay, we need to find a way to vaguely relate it back to the other one. And they're like, oh, okay, that'll do. It's similar to sort of like the Insidious series
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
when like the first one was a really good standalone piece of horror. Like it's one of my favorite horror films, favorite modern horror films
Yeah, I
ever
really like
because
Insidious.
like it was after Paranormal Activity was like exploding everywhere. And actually, no, am I talking about the wrong thing? I'll talk about Paranormal Activity in a second. But like it was after that, and it was like a fresh. It wasn't not completely fresh or original, but it was like a new twist on the horror thing, which was just exploding everywhere. Like every other week there was a new horror film coming out, and
Oh
Insidious
yeah.
was the only one that I watched, and I was like, oh, this is different. This actually genuinely like other horror films. You can sit there and you're like, okay, well, that's going to happen. Oh, it's happened. Yeah, great, brilliant. In Insidious, I was genuinely like, oh god, what's going on?
Mm. It's
Um,
that shot at the table and you see it for a split
Oh
second.
yeah, when
Is it
Darth Maul
lipstick
comes in
monster?
behind.
Yeah, whatever the monster's called. It's just that split second. Again, I was like waiting for
Yeah,
something to
that
happen. I
got
see
me.
that, and I was like, oh my god.
Like that film did really well, and that was a really good standalone thing. And then they made Insidious 2, which was not as good, but it was still
That was
okay.
the immediate sequel, wasn't it? Like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
takes place immediately after.
yeah. I believe
Yeah.
so. And because Insidious 1 ended with the spoilers. She takes the picture of him, and he's like, "Why'd you
The
do
guy's
that?" And then the
possessed.
guy's being possessed by a thing. So that does actually inherently set up a sequel, which is good because it's like a nice cliffhanger to sort of leave it on. But the Insidious 1 was a good film in and of itself.
Mm.
But then they did Insidious 2, 3, then they did Insidious, the last key thing, and they started sort of branching off a bit sort of further than the original sort of concept was. And by the end of by the most recent film, I'm just like, guys, just stop it. Just
I haven't seen Last Key for that exact reason. I'm like, I don't really care anymore. Like the third one, it's like okay, it's setting up this character. You're in this. It shows how the lady meets her two colleagues. I'm like, okay, that's cool, whatever. But I don't think Last Key was necessary.
no,
It didn't add anything to the story, from
yeah.
what I've
I
heard. I
feel
haven't
like
seen.
the Insidious franchise after number two was sort of like, okay, well, we've got to make another one because they're selling like hotcakes. And it's like, oh, which actors are available? Oh, you lot. Okay, right, we'll just do that because you're available. And they just sort of find a way to mishmash it together, and they just find
Mm.
like a vague connection to sort of shoehorn in there. And I don't think, obviously they want to get the money whilst it's trending and on demand, but
Yeah.
it's not the best way to sort of craft, a story. Like if you wanted to have three Insidiouses, I would have been like, okay, yeah. But like if you're gonna write if you're gonna have a trilogy, then you sort of want to wrap it up at the end of the third one. Whereas like they're always leaving the door a little bit open in case the film does really well and they can make another one. And that brings me on to Paranormal Activity, which was like the first film did incredible because it was like it was like a really fresh twist on horror.
Mm.
But then I'm going to see how many Paranormal Activities there's been now because
That's
there's been
one.
too many.
That's another one where I never saw the films, but I ended up watching a breakdown of the timeline because I just assumed it was people get chucked around the house, and for some reason they've all just got these cameras set up everywhere to record. Turns out there's a lot more to it than that. Like there's a whole story which goes on. It's not just about possession. It's I can't remember. It's like Toby or something or Tony.
Toby,
Toby is like the force, like the entity or something. And
yeah,
it just, yeah. I remember watching a breakdown. I was like, oh my, I'm actually tempted to watch the films now,
I
but
think it's
also it's just a lot of stuff to watch.
yeah, that's the thing. Like they're all connected, and that's fine because obviously they made the first one, made the second one, made the third one, and just found a way to link them together.
Mm.
But it's the fact that linking them together, which is an interesting aspect in the way they've done it, but that's become like a secondary, not even secondary, it's like a tertiary thing to the film. Like primary is like, oh, ghost in the house, and two, it's like all the just emotional character stuff happening, and then
Yeah,
the third priority is like linking it to the other films. Like if they sort of put more emphasis on the what's the greater scheme happening, and they made a trilogy, I think that would be a much greater piece of film than just spitting out like 5 or 6 films. I've forgotten how many there are.
yeah. I think you need to sort of have a rough story in your head. If you are planning on making more than one film, you need to know where your end goal is, like what you're heading towards. Because I can appreciate, obviously, you don't know how well films are going to do, so you can't just assume you're going to be making more. So at that point, you essentially need to have points where if there wasn't a film to come after it, the story could end there. But you
Yeah,
also need to be able to leave it open enough to address something else,
yeah,
which is what Insidious did, but they left it open too much to the point it's like, right, well, clearly you're setting up for a sequel now. Like you intend to make another film, you're just waiting to see what happens.
yeah. It starts to become like a thing where like the film you just watched, like spent like an hour and a half watching this film, and it's basically a trailer for the next one.
Yeah.
And I hate that. That's one of my pet hates of like a film is like
Who was it? James Wan who did the Insidious films, or the first couple at least?
I definitely did the first one. I think. I mean, let me
Because
just.
he did the Conjuring films, didn't he?
I believe
Because
so.
the
Yeah.
first one I remember watching, and that started because it's the Conjuring universe is where they all take place.
Yeah.
Um, and I find it hilarious because the guy who plays the dad in Insidious also plays the main guy in The Conjuring, which is great. Patrick something or other.
Yeah.
Um, but I remember watching the first Conjuring. I was like, yeah, that's good. You know, they've introduced the character, the nun, whoever is
Yeah.
introduced her, and then in the second one, they introduce her again. It's like she's like not a much bigger entity, but she's got more presence. And then they're like, right, well, we've run out of concepts of films we can make. What could we do? Oh, we've got this minor character in the Conjuring films, which we can make a whole film about. It's like The Nun. Again, it's a film I haven't seen, but apparently it's just awful. It's one of those ones
Yeah. I've
they've
had.
tried to be clever with it, but
Yeah.
it's just yeah.
Yeah. I didn't watch the actual film itself, but I think I watched a. It was like a breakdown or analysis of it,
Mm.
and I just completely just wasn't sold on it at all.
Yeah.
Because I was skeptical about watching it, so I just sort of because it's a horror, like different rules apply. Like for some films, I'll have to watch them before I can watch like a breakdown of it, because I don't
Mm.
want to sort of ruin it for myself. But with horror films, you always know that you know what's good. Like the majority, like 90% of the runtime of a horror film is going to be like ooh scary, and then like 10% of it is going to be like the story stuff, which I care about. So with horror films, I'm more than happy just to watch like the breakdowns or the analysis afterwards or before, sorry.
Yeah.
And I watched that and I was like, oh, that's
Have
mediocre.
you seen the Haunting series on Netflix? So Haunting of Hill House and Haunting of Bly Manor.
Haunted of Hill House, yes. Bly Manor was supposed to binge it, but then didn't hear great things about it, and it's just been moved further down my to-do list.
Fair enough. Haunting of Hill House. Watch that. Like I watched it with my girlfriend, and that is an incredible series. I
Yeah,
absolutely love that series. Haunting of Bly Manor, went into it expecting it to be the same. Very quickly, very quickly learned it's a different style. I
yeah,
was like, okay, cool. You know, I can roll with that. I like it. It's very clever. It's clever in its own ways. And it's got like subtle hints where it's like if you know what you're looking for, you'll pick them up. But it's one of the ones where it, I don't think it was as good. But that's just because of the fact the first one was so successful. But the guy who directed that, what was he? He did the Doctor Sleep film. Um, and that was a film I was very skeptical of. Just like because have you seen it?
no,
So it's obviously a sequel to The Shining, the Stanley Kubrick one, and essentially the book takes place. It's set when Danny is an adult. So it's set like 20 years in the future or something, like 20, 30 years in the future. Danny's an adult and he's living his own life. And the film, I think the book came out in 2013. The film is essentially trying to please both the book audience and sort of the audience who read The Shining, watched the film, and realized that Stanley Kubrick's film is not the same as the book. Like the ending of Stanley Kubrick's Shining is drastically different to how it is in the book. So the Doctor Sleep film tries to pay homage to both of those, and yeah,
impossible.
that it's good. It's a good film. Ewan McGregor, it is Ewan McGregor, isn't it? Trying to picture that. Yeah, Ewan McGregor does a great job in it. Oh, he's really really good in it, in my opinion. I don't know how I got onto that topic, but yeah, it's a good film. Recommend it. Yeah.
I think it's almost impossible to do a perfect adaptation of a book into a film and please both audiences. Like I'm yet to hear of any adaptation where everyone's been like, yes, this was a perfect adaptation, or like a perfect representation of the book. You're never going to please everyone, I don't think.
I'm pretty sure I mentioned it in the last episode we did, but if you can't tell by my posters, I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. The books are much better in my opinion. The films are great, don't get me wrong. The books are better in my opinion. And I know that's your typical sort of like fucking fanboy or whatever. Intellectual, you can read, what the hell? But it is like there's a lot in the books which was left out of the films. There's a scene in Order of the Phoenix where Hagrid literally beats up some people who were there to try and like take him in. He like shoves them and like punches them and stuff, and he knocks them all out because he's a giant and spells bounce off him and stuff. And it's a really really cool scene. And then McGonagall gets like knocked out into the hospital. Like she takes 4 spells to the chest, trying to help Hagrid. And it's a scene which is just never even mentioned in the film. It's like it's totally glossed over.
Thing is, it's like I think that's why it's an impossible task, because books just offer a level of depth and length that you just can't really do in a film. Like the Harry Potter films aren't short by any stretch. They're not the longest films in the world compared to like the extended Lord of the Rings or whatever. But like you can't fit everything in. Yeah. So I think it's impossible to please like film audiences and book audiences at the same time if you're adapting something. Yeah. Because if you include everything from the book, the film is going to be too long. It's going to be bloated. And it's going to be like, this is just boring me now. But if you trim it down too much, then the people who love the books can be like, oh, you left all this out, or you changed this and that. Like it's an impossible task. But I've not read the Harry Potter books.
Yeah.
Dyslexia.
No. Yeah, nice Lord of the Rings books.
Mate, can you see them in my frame?
Yeah, I can see them.
Right in the corner.
Yeah.
I have read like bits of them, but I listen to the audiobooks because
dyslexia,
yeah. Genuinely makes my head uncomfortable when I try and read extended things.
I just think it's an excuse. But yeah, no, I do see what you mean, and it is very, very hard to make something based off a pre-existing thing. Very hard to make a film which is going to please everyone, because everyone perceives something they read differently. Like I can read a book and get attached to, like, I know there's a lot of controversy in the Harry Potter fandom when it comes to who people's favorite characters are, because for some reason everyone has this huge sort of romantic obsession with Draco, and it gets really uncomfortable, I'll be honest. Like scrolling on like TikTok or something, the amount of weird fan stuff I see, it's really odd. But I really like Harry, not because he's just the main character, not just because he's the chosen one, but because growing up I could relate more to Harry in terms of I was an outsider, I didn't feel like I fit in, I was a specky little nerd. I have a scar along my stomach. And obviously he has a scar on his forehead. And it's like, there are a lot of things which I related to the character. And it's only as I got further into the books did I realise Harry is just an annoying little shit. He's so moany. It's really annoying. But yeah, like Harry's my favourite character. But my God, do I just want to slap him at times. But yeah. I don't know. Right, there's a lot of fandoms who Star Wars fandom. I've now learned there is a reference to the Star Wars fandom called the Fandom Menace, which is the darker side of the fandom who will go at anyone who doesn't agree with them.
Right.
What are your opinions on the sequel trilogy films?
Trash. Like no, that's not true. That's the Fandom Menace coming up, but the sequel trilogy. If you don't have any sort of connection with the previous Star Wars films, prequel or original, then you can sit down and watch the sequel trilogy and you'll be thoroughly entertained. They're visually stunning, they're funny at times, and you will sit down with your popcorn and you'll have a good time at the cinema.
Mm.
It's just true. Like they
Yeah.
are good films for their purpose, which was again cash money. That's what they were. That's what they're for.
Yeah.
But in the context of telling the best Star Wars story, or continuing the Star Wars story, trash. Like the Force Awakens, I could go for ages on this. The Force Awakens was the strongest of the bunch, and it's because it's basically an exact copy of A New Hope.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
the thing is, they didn't try to be anything else. It was like, this is the plot. There's Death Star 4.0, Starkiller Base. We've got to go blow it up. That's the ultimate Star Wars story. Is, you've got the underdog rebels, big bad Empire, or the First Order in that case, and we need to go to this place to find a thing, to do a thing, to blow up this thing, which will blow up the bigger thing. That's Star Wars in a nutshell. Like
Pretty
all three
much.
of the
And there's
previous,
some magic light ones at some point as well.
yeah, like all three of the original trilogies revolve around. All three of the original films in the original trilogy have that plot. It's like,
Yeah.
there's little old me, big old them. Let's blow something up to
Yeah.
win, and that's fine. Which is why Force Awakens is my favorite of the sequel trilogy, because it embraces that, and it's just like, yeah, okay. Where things get messy is when the Last Jedi gets involved, which that could be an entire podcast on its own, me shitting on the Last Jedi, as I'm sure a lot of people could also do.
Yeah.
The Last Jedi just sort of it bastardized Luke's character beyond recognition, and it's sort of like, God, Finn and what's her name, Rose.
Rose.
God, Rose is my least favorite character in cinema history.
What the fuck was that casino scene?
Yeah,
Why was that a thing?
yeah, there's so much bollocks in the new Star Wars films that just don't need. It just doesn't need to be there.
So there's a few, like there's a handful of issues I have across the trilogy. First of which is, I'm pretty sure, I think it's been addressed by John Boyega and Oscar Isaacs, that they think Poe and Finn should have been in a relationship, because that's not been represented in the universe. Aside from, there's a female on female kiss in Rise of Skywalker. Like, that's the only, as far as I'm aware off the top of my head, that is the one same-sex relationship-esque thing that happens in the franchise. Yeah, the relationship between Finn and Rose, I felt was shoehorned in just to essentially make it very clear, no, we're not having a gay couple as the leads. The whole casino thing, don't understand why that was there. The bit at the end with the boy and he forces the broom towards him, I'm like, right, that's cool, but it didn't go anywhere. The fact they changed the original ending of Rise of Skywalker. They were meant to have a different big bad, and they changed it. And the fact they gave Ben the worst fucking send off in history, and then Rey suddenly goes, "Yeah, look at this. What? I've got a yellow lightsaber or a gold lightsaber, what it is. What's your name? Skywalker." Roll credits. It's like, fuck off. Honestly, yeah, like I have a lot of issues. Like the prequel trilogies, as much as people shit on them, I love those films. Don't get me wrong, some of the CG has not held up. Jar Jar Binks is a weird, irritating little character, but I love him.
Yeah, like the thing, like I love the prequel trilogy. One, because it's the Star Wars that I grew up with. It came out when I was
Yeah, it's
when
our
I was
generation of
yeah.
Star Wars.
But I can accept why people hate them, because there's a lot to hate about them. Jar Jar
Yeah.
Binks. I don't like sand. There's I can understand that. That's fine.
Yeah.
But what the prequel trilogies did was they just built up, like they added so much more weight and gravity and depth to the original trilogy, which obviously takes place but afterwards. like it's like if you like me and Holly watched the sequel trilogy first, and then I was like, "Oh, did you like this film?" And she liked them because those films were designed to be liked by everyone, so she liked them. So that convinced her to watch the rest of them with me.
Mm-hmm.
So we went back and we watched Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and after those two films, she was like, "Do we have to keep watching Star Wars?" And I was like, "Yes, we do." Watched Revenge of the Sith, she liked it, and then we watched the original trilogy.
Oh, so you skipped out like Solo, Rogue One, and all that.
Yeah, we didn't do that.
Okay.
And we watched them, and at the end, she was like the Darth Vader, Anakin slash Darth Vader slash the Skywalker Vader timeline. That is Star Wars. Like it's just so like it's that ties it all together, and it's just so tragic. That Holly was watching it. She was like, we finished the Return of the Jedi, and she saw the thing where like Hayden Christensen comes up as the Force ghost, and he's like, he smiles at Luke and stuff. And after that, she sort of watched it. She was like, and she just sort of like sat there, and she's like, that's such a tragic story for Anakin. And I was like, yeah, and like
I totally forgot that Hayden Christensen was comped in to Return of the Jedi in recent releases. I will say though, there's a funny meme I saw where it was because Rey takes Luke's and Leia's lightsabers, wraps them up and puts them in sand. She forces them underground and covers them with sand. But obviously Luke's lightsaber, which is originally Anakin's, which is the one she buries. Obviously she buries it in sand, and then it just plays the clip of Anakin going, "I don't like sand."
That's funny.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I do agree. The original trilogy, so 4, 5, 6, were amazing films. Like they were amazing. It gave one of, if not the biggest plot twist in cinema history. Like I think that was the first time that twist was done. Or if not, it's the one which definitely drew attention.
It's something
to
I think new audiences are a bit numb to because it is so like
it's
iconic.
so overdone now.
But like at the time, or watching it for the first time, you're like, whoa.
Well, it's the fact on set they didn't know that was being said. The lines being delivered were different. It was Obi-Wan killed your father, I think was being said on set. But one point I love is the fact that the original trilogy builds a relationship between the prequel trilogy builds a relationship between the big bad of the original trilogy in his youth, along with a guy who is in, I think it's like not even 10 minutes of screen time as Ben, old man Ben, and it shows both of them in their prime, and the fact that the choreography for the prequels is stronger, more aggressive, like more flourishy than in the original trilogy. It's really tricky to get my head around it. Trying to name everything correctly. Like it's more, the choreography is stronger and more professional, mainly because the budget improved, but also because they were all trained as Jedi. Whereas Luke picks up a lightsaber and goes, "Oh look, this thing turns on. Let's point it at my eye." So he's just essentially trying to defend himself. He's not been trained properly to use it. The way he's been trained is by deflecting bolts from the little flail thing and just essentially using the Force, and then he sees Yoda for a bit. That's his training. Whereas Anakin, Obi-Wan, Mace Windu,
years and years and years,
fought in the
Clone
Temple.
Wars and stuff.
Yeah, the Clone Wars animated show is one of my favorite things I've ever seen. Absolutely amazing. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Honestly, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's another one of those things on my list for me to binge.
I'm surprised you haven't seen it, to be honest.
No, I've watched so many Star Wars lore videos where I've got the viable pieces out of it, but I've never sat down and watched it all in one thing yet. I intend to.
Yeah.
The reason why the sequels land so flat with me is, well, primarily because there is no character in the sequel that is really that interesting to me. Like they had a good angle with Finn being a defected stormtrooper,
Yeah.
which was I was like, oh, okay, this is a good like angle. Like, this is going to be interesting how he perceives the world and how he goes about his business. And then like that's basically just sort of cast aside for the rest of the trilogy. Rey, complete just. You know how much it pisses me off how like Rey just kicks everyone's ass despite not having any like Jedi training or anything. She's just like this scavenger, and then she's like gets a lightsaber. That's a cool moment. I like that. I can appreciate that. But it's the fact
Yeah.
that she decks Kylo Ren, who is
Who's
like
been trained by Luke Skywalker?
he was trained by Luke Skywalker. He's under the guidance of Snoke. He is the big bad menace. Like, do you know how weird it would be A New Hope if Luke encountered Darth Vader for the first time and just decked him?
It,
Like,
I
there isn't like for the like that thing in the Force Awakens. Yes, she doesn't kill him, but and they're torn apart by the thing. But it's
yeah.
like Kylo Ren, like Finn gives it a good go, and then Rey comes on and decks him, and it's like, oh, congratulations, your biggest threat to your characters is this dude, and he's basically been neutralized in the first film, and you've somehow got to
Yeah.
bring that back up in the second and third films, and then it's just like, yeah, like the thing that will kill a film quicker than anything else, I think, is like having a villain or a baddie or an obstacle that is just so beneath your protagonist because it
Yeah,
just doesn't feel like anything's happening.
the fact there's no weight to his character because he loses to Ray, who literally picks up a lightsaber for the first time like a day earlier. But the fact you might be able to correct me on this. I haven't seen the film in a while. But the fact that Finn takes a lightsaber across the back and he essentially just walks it off with a bit of like
Yeah,
tape across it. It's like, so are you telling me that a lightsaber across the back doesn't do the same damage it does in other films? Like,
see,
that man should be dead.
that's the thing. Like in the sequel trilogy, they sort of lightsabers act more like swords,
Yeah.
whereas like in the prequel trilogy, like if you was to get hit like Finn did up the back down the middle, you split in
Your
half.
whole thing is cauterized,
Yeah,
yeah.
like you split in half and boom, that's you. Banana split. But like, but in this, it's just
Yeah.
like, oh, this film, well, it's PG-13, so we can't have that. So it's
Well,
just
I think
it
the
burns.
explanation someone gave to me is because it's an unstable crystal. And I'm like, that doesn't mean shit. It just means the blade
No.
looks a bit different and he needs exhaust ports. Don't get me wrong, I love the design of Kylo's blade. I think it's a really cool addition. The
Yeah,
fact
it's
it's
cool.
actually got a hilt. I'm like, that looks really cool. It's funky. I remember seeing that in the trailer for the first time. I also remember seeing all the gifs of it. The fact like he does that, the blades come out, and then I just remember seeing all the gifs of like other blades coming out of those blades, and it was just yeah. But the fact that Palpatine came back, I appreciate the fact they got the same actor back to play
Oh
Palpatine.
yeah.
I appreciate that, but
I also hate the fact they had to bring back Palpatine.
fuck off. I I haven't seen this confirmed by any actual execs or anyone who is of value I can sort of take without question, like what they say. But the original villain of Rise of Skywalker, from what I heard, was meant to be the son of the Force, who is this character who's introduced in, I believe, it's the Clone Wars show. Essentially, you've got the father who is perfect balance. You've got the daughter who represents the Force, and the son who represents the darkness. Or no, daughter represents the light,
Yeah.
son represents the darkness, and the father is perfect balance. So you can't have one without having the other, and then stuff happens. So essentially, the son is the godfather of the Sith. Like, he is pure darkness in terms of the Force, and apparently he was meant to be the original antagonist of of the trilogy, like the big bad that's revealed in the third film. They cast Matt Smith to play him. Matt Smith was apparently credited as him, or like he was on like the IMDb page and everything, and then Disney came in with their rewrites and went, no, Palpatine's a character that people know, right? Cool, bring him in. It was just like, what the fuck? Snoke. The only reason why I like Snoke as a character is because he was played by Andy Serkis. That's it. I don't remember what Snoke does, to be honest with you.
Basically nothing.
He sits in a chair and he gets his top half cut off.
Well, I think what really irritated me about Snoke is like obviously he's introduced in the Force Awakens, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. This is a new big baddie, like because you got like middle baddie, which is Kylo Ren, and then you got big baddie, which is Snoke. Like in the original
you
trilogy,
had Vader in the Empire.
You had middle baddie Vader, and then big baddie, which is Palpatine.
Yeah.
So like I was interested to see where they're going to go with Snoke, and then he gets killed off in the second one, and I was like, oh, so what's going to happen? Who's now going to be like the string puller? And then in the third one, right at the start, you see that Snoke was, I don't know if you noticed
it's
this.
A clone.
Snoke is just a clone of, well,
Palpatine.
Yeah, it's like a failed experiment for like Palpatine to clone himself, and there's just a bunch of Snokes in all these.
Yeah,
in these big...
I remember seeing that, and I was just like, "You fucking what?"
Yeah,
because Force Awakens was written by J.J. Abrams and someone else. Last Jedi was written by that someone else and Rian Johnson. Rise of Skywalker was written by J.J. Abrams.
Yeah,
which is why none of the films feel connected. They've essentially all...
It's just a big power tug between Rian Johnson
and JJ.
Yeah.
So Rian Johnson undoes he essentially takes all of the stuff which JJ hands him and then goes, that's nice, we're going that way though. Then JJ goes, oh, that's cool. Let's cut off all of those story arcs and go back this way.
Yeah.
But then also introduce... Again, this might be really into it, but I saw it on a post somewhere, and it was Oscar Isaac is the one South American sort of heritage character who's in the main sort of cast, and yet he's the drug runner. And it's like, okay, you couldn't have given him a better story arc than that. Also, you're going to shoehorn in that love interest, literally shoehorned in, who's never been mentioned before, and apparently we're meant to believe that they're a thing. Okay, you do you. That's cool. The fact that Palpatine, even though he is essentially a walking corpse at this point, he's got the entirety of the Sith running through his bones. And it's like, all Rey has to do is kill me, strike me down, and you will take on the Sith. And then Rey strikes him down. But nothing happens. Cool. Yeah. One thing I did really like, though, was the bit where Ben Solo is fighting the Knights of Ren. He's literally getting the shit beaten out of him. All of a sudden he does this, pulls out a lightsaber. He goes, and then just goes ham. I was like, that I really liked. That was a cool transition of power in that scene.
Yeah, that was really nice. There's loads of good areas or good moments in the sequel trilogy, which are like, again, like the whole mechanic of Ben and Rey having this sort of connection where they can see each other or stuff, or like at the end where she hands him the lightsaber through the Force. That's a cool mechanic they could have gone so many other places with. But it's just, I think the one thing to sum up the sequel trilogy is like you can't make a great film just by checking boxes.
Yeah.
Like you just can't do that, and I feel like that's why it sort of failed as a good continuation of the Star Wars universe, was because it just felt like a bunch of Disney executives and Kathleen Kennedy were just like, okay, this happens. Oh, we need this. Oh, he needs love interest. Let's do this. Just tossed it to the writers, and it was like, okay, hit all those marks. You got this much run time. Do it.
I don't. Off the top of your head, do you know why JJ didn't do Last Jedi? I can't remember what the reason is.
I think he had a commitment somewhere else where he wasn't available to do that film when they wanted it filmed.
I felt like they should have at least brought him in to help write it. because then you would have had some consistency. I don't get me wrong. I feel like Rian Johnson gets too much hate for The Last Jedi. It is a good film on its own. If you put it into the Star Wars universe and look at it in that perspective, there's a lot of issues I have with it. But on its own, it's a good film.
Yeah, well, I think the same can be said with all the sequel films.
When you look at them as an individual film, they work. They hit all the plot points. You get an arc. But then when you put it into the bigger picture, it's like, maybe not. But yeah, I feel like he gets a lot of hate. Like, he did Knives Out, and I love that film. That is a great film. Have you seen it?
No. Okay. It's another one that's on my list.
It's on the list.
It's because I'm gonna have a T-shirt made up.
Watch it, honestly. It's a very clever little film. Daniel Craig does a Southern American accent. It is weird, but I love it. But yeah, I feel like he gets a lot of hate, which is unnecessary. And I feel like a lot of people just jumped on the bandwagon of hating him for it. The film, I have my issues with. Him as a director, whatever. But they didn't have the consistency. It suddenly went from writer-director writing it to different director writing it to just director writing it. And I was like, that shouldn't be how things go. If you're going to plan a whole new trilogy, map out all of the points before you even get there. Because wasn't there a thing of... I know they did massive reshoots on Rise of Skywalker because they literally changed the whole plot of it. Like, they took out so many scenes and reshot. But there was one of the films where they were rewriting as they were shooting. I can't remember which. It was either Last Jedi or Rise of Skywalker. But it was like they literally didn't know what they were filming until like the morning of on some days. I'm like, that's not... At that point...
That's the kind of thing you'd get if like a student is trying to make a trilogy. You shouldn't expect that when it's Disney with basically a blank check.
Of money they've put in. It's Disney have turned around and went, right, as long as there's Star Wars and Disney on it at some point, there you go. There's a blank check with 8 zeros on the end of it. Like, go nuts. But the fact that it's so inconsistent bugs me. How long have we been talking about Star Wars, by the way?
Probably for quite a while. We was over an hour when I last checked it. That was before we started talking about Star Wars. I think about 25 minutes we've been writing about Star Wars.
Jesus Christ.
We're currently sitting at an hour and 33.
Nice.
But to summarise, indecision will destroy not only a film, but it will destroy a trilogy or a franchise.
Especially when it comes to two uni students sitting and talking over a video call.
We're the real experts.
Exactly. We know what we're on about.
There's a reason why we haven't had a failed franchise yet.
It's nothing to do with the fact we haven't had a franchise.
Yeah.
All that's important is we haven't had a failed one.
Yeah. You can't argue with the stats, You just can't.
How many film like box office flops has JJ had? How many box office flops have we had?
0.
There you go. Those are the numbers we need to pump out.
Yeah. But I think that is a fair assessment of them. Is like if you're indecisive with what you're trying to do, both as a storyline wise and sort of product wise, you're going to end up with something that doesn't satisfy people who, especially if you've got a pre-established franchise like Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like you have to know what you're going to do, and you have to be. It's almost set in stone what the major points are.
So you need a start and an end. You need to know exactly where you're heading from the get-go.
Like right in the start of A New Hope, like obviously you have the big bad of Darth Vader, and you have the protagonist of Skywalker, or Luke Skywalker. And although you don't know about him being the father yet or anything like that, you know that there's going to be a confrontation between these two. And if you know it's a trilogy, you know that in the third film, that's when they're going to come at it fully. And like you've got the start point where it establishes both the good and the evil, and then you've got the end point of that they finally come and have that climactic battle, and then there's like some busy work in the middle. Like
it's like the middle is where the dynamic changes.
Yeah,
it's like it suddenly goes from like they've never met, they've never had a confrontation to suddenly they've had a confrontation and suddenly you had all of this info thrown at you. But that's not the biggie. Like the biggie comes in the next film, so it's like you need to have that build up gradually.
Whereas like the sequel trilogy, you established this new character, and you established this new baddie, which is Kylo Ren, and they have a fight in the first film, which would be okay if Rey got her ass kicked, but she didn't. She decked him, and then in the second film, they have another scrap, and also they've killed the biggest baddie and they've sort of joined sides for a little bit. It's like, oh wait, no we haven't, it's just a bait. And then the third film, like the big baddie's gone, the protagonist has already beaten the villain like twice, so it's just like, oh, what are we waiting for, you know?
Well, it's the fact they also killed off Luke in The Last Jedi, which I don't understand why. Like, he didn't need to die. I don't see how that served the plot in any way.
Like him dying, but then him coming back as a Force ghost in the last one, it's just like, you might as well just let him live, you know? You might, like, it's like, oh, he's dead, oh no, but we still need to have him in the story, he's still important, people like him. It's like, oh, he's right, he's just a Force ghost. Like, you're still going to have to pay, you're still going to have to pay Mark Hamill to do his Force ghost stuff, so you might as well not piss off the entire fandom and keep him alive. You still have to pay him. Like, you know.
I did like how they sort of showed that Leia was possibly stronger than him when it came to being a Jedi. Like, and she was training, and then they showed them like essentially training together. That I liked. I don't think it was addressed well.
No.
Like, they introduced it, but nothing ever really paid off.
That's something that should have been a theme from the beginning.
Wait, it's because trilogy. Because Leia's out in space, and at this point we don't know anything. Her body's just floating around. All of a sudden she just goes, and she flies towards the ship, and suddenly, oh, by the way, she's got the Force too.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't know that one yet.
Like, if Leia was going to be Force sensitive, that's fine. I'm okay with that. She's a Skywalker after all. Yeah. But obviously it's not addressed in the original trilogy.
No.
There's nothing to suggest it in the prequels.
I think actually Vader might address it. I think there is a line of dialogue which addresses saying she might also.
But it's not a major point though, is it? It's not it's not one of her character traits. Like
yeah.
It's not something you'd think of when you think of Leia. That's probably due to like the 1980s thinking where the female is just a love interest, but we're not going to go into that.
She is just there. Underwear can't be worn in space.
But like, if you're going to have her be Force sensitive, I'm fine with that. It makes sense. She's a Skywalker. But then don't just. It's like, build it up. Don't just wait until she's floating out in space and then she forces herself back into the ship. It's like, not even like if Jedi could, if Force sensitive people could do that, then why did Obi-Wan and Anakin get so worried when the bridge windows broke in the start of Revenge of the Sith? You know, it's like, oh no, okay, Force, we're back in. Like, don't introduce things that contradict other things. Let's stop ranting about Star Wars because it's been a long one.
We need to call it here.
We can do a Star Wars exclusive podcast one day.
Yes, we'll do just fandoms in general.
We'll just rant about all our least favorite franchises.
Oh god.
Most disrespected franchises.
We could be here for a while with that one. Yeah. But anyway, let's call it there.
We can wrap it up here. Do you want to have a question of the week that we can take home and mull over between the next episode? Ooh. Or
what is a film or a franchise, maybe more a film, that you think there's not really a lot that could be done to improve it? Like, it is essentially as good as it will ever be.
Film or franchise?
I'll say film because a franchise will be more difficult to come up with.
Film. I'll throw a curveball out because I don't know if you've seen it. Oh, but I've spoken to you about this film many times before, so I don't know if it's a bit of a repeat for you.
No, go for it.
I was going to say The Place Beyond the Pines.
Okay.
Because it tells... Again, it's difficult to explain if you haven't seen it. Actually, it's not difficult at all. Like, the first half of the film sort of takes place in the 90s, and it's Ryan Gosling's character, and it shows sort of two storylines of two different characters coming together, and their paths cross. And spoiler alert, Ryan Gosling's character gets killed by Bradley Cooper's character, and then the second half of the film is set way down in the future, about like 17 or 18 years in the future, where Ryan Gosling's character has a son, and Bradley Cooper's character also has a son, and the sons go to the same high school and they become friends, and sort of history sort of almost repeats itself, and then the son of Ryan Gosling's character sort of goes off and repeats history. Like, it's better if you watch it. If you're watching at home and you haven't seen it, go watch it. Joy, have you seen it?
I haven't, no, but I kind of want to see it now.
Yeah, I'd watch it if I was you. It's a good thing because it's like a generational sort of progression, because it starts with, you know, young Ryan Gosling, and then like it goes to his son being a similar age to what he is, and then, well, not similar, but a few years younger than what he was at the start of the film. And it's just sort of, you see the parents and their actions and how it affects the children and their actions, which then leads to like the third act, which is like, you know, history repeating itself, like I said. And like, I remember watching this film, and there was some people who were saying how they should have given more to the ending, to how Ryan Gosling's character's son goes on to live his life. But I think that the point of that film was to sort of illustrate the impact that one generation's actions can have on the next generation, and how, like, you know, it's sort of like the connection between the parent and the son kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I think that film ended as perfectly as you could possibly end it, because you see the son basically become his dad, despite the fact that he's got people around him who are trying to take care of him.
Yeah.
Like, it's again, you have to pay attention when you watch it, but Ryan Gosling's character, before he gets killed, he talks about not having his dad. And it's in the act of trying to be there for his son that he ends up getting himself killed, which then leads his son not to have his dad, which leads to his son being just as messed up as Ryan Gosling's character was. Mm. And it's sort of ironic, because Bradley Cooper's character is sort of emotionally distant because of sort of trauma that he had from killing Ryan Gosling's character, and then finding out that he had a son, like a baby boy at the time. Mm. So he then becomes emotionally distant from his son. So you get these two characters, these two sons, who sort of are without their father figures, and it just shows the impact that has on them, and they come together in a perfect cocktail of mess.
Yeah.
And, like, you know, events unfold, things are learned, events transpire, and things happen. I'm not going to spoil the story anymore for you, but I think that film was done, that story was told about as good as you could possibly tell it.
Okay. I don't know how I'm meant to follow up from that one. I mean, to be honest, when I think of films where it's like I watched them and I'm not thinking of ways to improve it, I think the ones that come to mind are Inception, mentioned it earlier, and there's another one we mentioned before, can't remember, Shutter Island. I think those two films, yeah, those two films I've watched so many times, and I don't need to think about how I'd improve it. I can just sit and be like, I really like this film. I like the beats. I like how things play out. I like the arcs. I like the fact that there's actual character development. They're just good films in general. So, yeah,
like you couldn't tell Shutter Island any better than it was told.
Yeah,
and same with Inception.
I think, in my opinion, Scorsese's best work.
Probably, yeah. I'd go with that.
Yeah. Anyway, right. Should we call it here then?
Yeah, we'll call it here, because we're at 1 hour and 45 minutes.
Oh, damn.
Which is good, though, because, you know, we've had good, riveting conversation. Half of that, not half of that, about 30 minutes of that is shitting on Star Wars, but...
Well, that's beside the point. That's fine. That's probably about as much time and effort that was put into the sequel trilogy. But there you go.
Yeah, so we'll wrap it up here, and if you feel like it, you can comment down below and talk about one film that you think was as good as it could have been. And we'll talk to you. I was going to say next week, but we're actually going to record another podcast very soon. So
yeah.
So maybe we'll talk. Maybe we'll catch up with you midweek. Maybe
something like that. We
don't
want to. We don't want to.
We don't want to make any promises. We can't.
Yeah.
We can't fill it on.
But we might have a little surprise in the next episode.
We might have a surprise. Yeah.
Might have a surprise. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I've been George. He's been Elliot. This has been the Mise En Sesh podcast, and we will see you whenever. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.
Goodbye, treasured viewer.